In our next segment, we're going to talk about the southern ball in our diamond model, the organization, and the leader's role as an organizational architect. You may not think of yourself as an architect of organizations, and yet in a leadership role you will have multiple opportunities and responsibilities for designing and creating not only structure but the processes and systems that hold an organization together. So we've talked already about the northern ball, who are you, and the eastern ball and the northeast axis, what's your strategic story. We've talked about how you might think about selling your story, that is, developing influence with other people using level 1 techniques, level 2 techniques, and level 3 techniques. And now we're going to talk about the north-south axis and the southern ball, whether or not you can design an organization that helps rather than hinders accomplishing the things that you want to do. One of the important principles to remember is that leaders have an indirect influence on organizational outcomes. So every organization is embedded in a series of background factors. These background factors will include things like the labor market, your competitive structure in your industry, the economic conditions, the cultural situation, and your location, for example. And in that context, a leader's philosophy, a leader's vibes, will come into play as one begins to make design decisions about how we're going to organize. So these organizational design decisions include things like structure, who's going to report to whom, the processes involved for coordinating across different departments. And of course, Lawrence and Lorsch wrote this classic book, Organizations and Their Environment, to describe how the more complex and diverse organizations become, the greater the need for internal coordination and synergy, what we could call organizational capital. When you put people into these designs that you've created, including the jobs, the divisions, the departments, the teams, what emerges then between this collision of populating a design and the design itself is organizational culture. So the culture, that is the way we work together and the implicit assumptions we have about how to get things done in our design with the people we have, is what produces results. So we've already talked about how to measure results: financial, customer value proposition, core capabilities, and then the intangible impact of human capital, social capital, and organizational capital. So the point here is that leadership only has an indirect effect on outcomes, but through making the design decisions, if you make good design decisions, you may have a positive effect on organizational culture. If you make bad design decisions, you may have a negative effect on organizational culture. So let's think about that for a second. Ford Motor Company once had a sign hanging in their organizational development war room that said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." The point being that you may have a good strategic story, but if you don't have the right design and the resulting culture when you put people in that design, then you may not be able to implement your strategy because of either the habitual nature or the inertia of the existing culture. Lou Gerstner at IBM once said, "Culture isn't part of the game, it is the game." So it's important for an effective leader to understand the significance of organizational culture, what it is, a set of shared vibes among the people who are populating your design, and then to be able to manage it. And there are hundreds and hundreds of systems and processes. You've got financial systems, accounting systems, control systems, operating systems, human resource systems, and so forth.